One day, a little girl was sent to the post office to collect a letter. There she met a wolf that promised to help her with her needs. The wolf asked her to wait until she was the only one so he could give her his full attention. She might have even thanked him for his patience and come back later to collect her letter. She found the wolf waiting for her.
And that's how it starts tonight. Thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of Celebration of South African Women in Opera by Cape Town Opera. And tonight we welcome Christine Crouse. Molo Makris.
Hey Molo, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. And everyone who do not know what we've just played a little excerpt from the show we've just done, which is Amagokra, an all-female opera about gender-based violence. We'll talk about it in the interview, and you'll hear more about it. But Makrisi, before we start, everyone knows you as the director of the world-renowned Porgy and Bess by Cape Town Opera, and also the director of Le Nozze di Figaro and Amagokra, which is what we've just watched now. Please tell us, outside of the theater, when you're not directing, who is Christine?
When I looked at that question, I had to laugh. I'm a Christ follower. I am a widow. I am the mother of 2 adult children, Rainier and Irina. I love my family. I love their friends. I love cooking. I love watching movies. I go for walks with my dogs. And I'm just like, I have a rather large servant heart, which is not always good, but I like serving people.
Thank you, Makrisi. And you've been in the industry for a very long time. When did you realize that opera was a career you wanted to pursue, and what brought that decision about?
I was very fortunate, Masi. I was born into a musical household. My father, Philip Crouse, was a pianist, an organist, and also singer. He sang mostly light music. My mother, Nelly du Toit, was a famous singer in South Africa and a very good vocal teacher. And so I was told that by my mother, my late mother, that I sat through my first Messiah when I was 5 years old, Handel's Messiah when I was 5 years old. Of course, I can't remember that. But so I was very lucky to grow up in a household where there was always music. And I have 3 sisters, and my mother used to teach at home. And I remember in those early days, excuse me, my sisters like copying the students outside. And so, yeah, I grew up going with my mother to the theatre. I loved the theatre. I mean, it's like Magdalene said the other day, it has that special smell. When you walk onto a stage, it's that special smell. And I went with my mother to rehearsals. I used to beg her sometimes, take me to rehearsals, please. Yes. So, yeah, that was how I got into, I had other dreams. First of all, I wanted to become a conductor because, at that time, there were so few women conductors in the world. I thought, let me. But, that didn't work out. And my parents were very keen for me to become a pianist, but there I rebelled, unfortunately. And said, no, thank you. So I decided to do a BA drama degree.
Lovely.
And
tell me, your journey. So when did you start your career in opera? And can you just take us through the things that you've done?
So, funnily enough, what I started doing when I went with my mother to the theatres, I would give her notes, this high school girl. And then going into varsity, I would go with her and say, no, you didn't do that well, or anyway. So I did my drama degree, and then I got offered a job as an assistant stage manager at NAPAC, the Natal Performing Arts Councils. I was there for 3 months, and then I got a job offer from KPAB to become stage manager. And so I moved to Cape Town. My first production, I remember, was L'Elisir d'Amore, with Angelo Gobato directing, Aviva Pelham and Manuel Escorcho. And I remember we had real chickens on the stage.
So you had to manage those chickens.
We had to manage the chickens, yeah. But so I stage managed mostly opera and musicals. And I worked with people that mentored me through that pathway. And then I was appointed as assistant director, and I worked a lot with directors from locally and abroad. Mm-hmm. Then I became resident director. Oh, what happened then? Yes. And then I got my first production. My first production was a restaging of Gigi Fiasconaro, who was the very first head of the opera school's production of Butterfly. I'll never forget that. With the late Yoko Watanabe and Giacomo Aragal. And Aragal couldn't speak a word of English. It was all in Italian. And there was I with my kitchen Italian trying to tell him what to do. Yeah, and from being resident director, I started doing my own productions. Then eventually I became, I must now remember, I took a break from theatre when I had my first child, because I had my first child very late. I was 38. Mm-hmm. And so then I worked at the Baxter Theatre for about 6 years as a project manager. Then I went back to Cape Town Opera to become an organizer, the opera organizer, and eventually became the artistic director, and then moved from artistic director to head of outreach and education. And then I left Cape Town Opera. And so now what I do is I lecture I'm a freelance director, and I lecture at the University of Cape Town Opera School. So that's it in a nutshell.
You've done it all. You've done it all. Like, there's no job that I'll put you in like sentence. No. You've done admin, you've done stage, you've done, thank you, Makwetu. And, you've just directed Amagokra. It's an all-female opera about gender-based violence. And it was specific on two ladies, which was Kwezi and Uyinene Mkhwetyana. The clip we just played now is the role of Uyinene Mkhwetyana. What I want to know is, when you got that brief and they said, this is what we would like you to direct next, which is a very powerful concept. How did you go about getting that on stage?
It was a long process because it was workshopped, of course, and so it took a lot of work between us and the librettist and Professor Silver, the head of the opera school who conducted the piece, and the composer. I think COVID put a spanner in the works for us a few times, and it was difficult. Amagokra was difficult for me because it's all in Xhosa, and I don't speak Xhosa. Unfortunately, I have a few words that I can use, and it took a long time to get to a concept with my designer and the designing team, because I just couldn't find it, because we did a double bill, so we had to do it in one set in that venue, as you know. And so eventually we stumbled upon the suitcase story about we all carry suitcases with us in our lives. Memories, good memories, bad memories. And as you grow up, the journey, you travel with suitcases all the time where you go.
Correct.
Amagokra itself, to stage it, was a challenge for me because of the subject matter. I think I also the professional singers and the students that were in it. I think it was a hard process for them as well. There were lots of tears.
Yes.
There were lots of fights, but in the end, it really worked, and it's such a powerful story. I mean, when you started that clip tonight, I just wanted to cry all over again because it's just such a powerful moment. And the fact that Uyinene's parents were there on opening night, and then the students, there were stories that made them obviously in their past that they could relate to, and the whole thing about gender-based violence, it was just it was a very moving experience in the end. And then to see how the cast got involved in it. And, it was, I really loved it at the end, but it was a hard road.
And, you just mentioned that the Mkhwetyanas were there for the opening night. Their feedback was, it's so lovely to know that our daughter's name has become a name of awareness. And I think that's what exactly happened when you told the story. And, the subject matter, the actual subject is a very, very, very powerful one because nothing has changed. We're still going. And at a time when we celebrate South African women, there's a woman out there who's suffering those injustices. Yeah. So I hope that as we go forward, we tell those stories so that there's more awareness. People know that those things happen and we need to find a way forward where they don't happen anymore. Christine, you'll be directing our upcoming La Rondine, and which is in November.
Yes.
Something totally different now. This one is not in Xhosa. So, with what you've already covered for now, what do you hope your audience will take away from La Rondine when you're done with it?
It's a beautiful piece. I'm hoping that we will give them a wonderful experience of, speaking to the senses. I believe that when you're in the theatre, you need to really try and touch people so that they come into the story and buy the story. So I have started working on the concept with our designer, Michael Mitchell. And we sort of leaning towards the 20s, going to the 20s in France. And it's a rich area that, there were a lot of artists in France that came from America, Scott Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein, all those people. So it's an interesting era to do it in. So I'm looking forward to creating something beautiful.
And we look forward to seeing it. And everyone watching tonight, Christine will be directing La Rondine, which Cape Town Opera will be staging in November. So please keep an eye on the Cape Town Opera website and our social media platforms. You will get all the details you need. And also, if you have any questions, you can email us at info@capetownopera.co.za. Christine, there's lots of people watching tonight. And, when you were giving us your biography, I realized that you've done everything. And if someone asked you and said, how do I become a renowned director? What advice would you give that person if they asked you that question?
You need a lot of grace. I can tell you that. But for me, it has been so worthwhile to have gone up the ranks, because I literally learned how theatre works. And I know a lot about voice, which has also stood me, well, and doing a production. I would say if you have, because I can see with the students that have worked with me, when they have a flair, because I often try and involve the students to be an assistant or take notes. So I would say the best advice that I can give is you need to observe, you need to watch, you need to try and learn, good or bad, from people that you work with. You need to know music. You need to read music. I think that's an asset. Mm-hmm. And you need to have an understanding of the languages that opera is sung in, But for me, the way that I learned was watching other directors and taking from them what was good. And then sometimes I didn't agree with them, but you can always learn something.
Yes. And, in Xhosa, there's a saying that says, Inyati ibuzwa kwabaphambili. And what you just said now, where you said you watched other directors that were there before you. And that's how we learn. We learn from experience. So experience teaches where to go forward. So thank you for that. And now, Chrissy, you've done quite a lot. I'm sure you won't have one answer for me, but I'd like to know your highlights in your career.
Highlights? All right. So I was thinking about that the other day. I think my first highlight was the Madama Butterfly that I did with, that I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Yoko Watanabe, the soprano, was a beautiful Japanese singer, and I just remember, when I did the love duet, we let her hair down, and she came out, and she was so beautiful. And then Angelo Gobato said to me, it's right that a woman does Madama Butterfly, because I don't know, it was just such a lovely piece to do. Mm-hmm. And then my first Bohème, I would think, many years ago. That was before Cape Town Opera, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. With Andrea Katzel and Sidwell Hartmann, Aviva Pelham, David van Rooyen. We had such a gas. And it was, it was my first kind of big production. And I really loved that. Then I enjoyed the Aida that I did, my first Aida. And then, of course, obviously, the highlight was Porgy and Bess for me, I mean, how I often think about it, and I think how grateful I am towards Cape Town Opera and Michael Williams for offering me to do a new production of Porgy. I went to places that I would never have dreamed to be, never in my life. And that was such a highlight for me. We called ourselves the Porgy family.
Thank you, Marcus.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you. Mm-hmm.
No, it's all right. The first year we went, 2009 was the first tour that we did of Porgy. And we almost toured for 10 years, about 9 years. And then we still had imports in the roles of Sporting Life and Bess. And then we went on to our UK tour, and that was the first time that we sported an all South African cast. There was not one import, if I can remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that's something to be chuffed with, you know.
And you know that Porgy Bears has been seen by almost the whole world, and the reviews, you know. So I think when you count it as part of your highlights, that's true, because when I wasn't even at Cape Town Opera, I knew what Porgy Bears was, because it was everywhere. It was everywhere, and also because you decided to take it and put it in a context where we could understand it, like you said in the other interview. That you went to all the Soweto and you try to understand all of this, and then you put that in your concept, which is why it became so easy to relate.
Yeah, and also, you know, I think the cast felt that it belonged to them because it was their story, you know, and that is what I think, still believe to this day, what made it such a success was just the buy-in and the enthusiasm, you know, the dancing. I mean, you know, it's born Daba.
That's exactly what Paulina Molefane said yesterday. She said, the second I moved away from Europe and I came and I contextualized it and made it a South African thing, it was easy for me to understand. Like you just said now, when the cast took it and actually owned it as one of their own, it was one of those. It just took off.
Yeah,
so thank you very much.
That's amazing.
Makwetu, I'm sure with all the experience you have and all the years you've had, there's been some challenges.
Oh yeah, there's always a challenge.
What challenges have you faced, Makwetu?
You know, I think each production brings its own challenges. I've had in my life challenges from working with overseas singers that fly in like 3 days before, and you need to walk them through the role. And then I used to get upset that if they're not doing what I want them to do. But I remember those were still in the days that Angelo was at Cape Town Opera, and he said, man, leave them, let them do what they want to do, you know. And then I calmed down. I've had some pretty, not a lot, but a few personality clash issues, which I'm not always proud of, but, you know, these things happen sometimes. And so because we work with so many different personalities, it's often becomes an obstacle. And yeah, then the normal challenges like getting everything ready, you know. But, you know, challenges are there to, I don't know, I suppose when you get over them, or, you know, you learn how to handle it better. But I mean, every time you do a piece, for me, it's a challenge.
Yes.
Like, I never thought I would get Amagokra up. I thought, no, this is never going to work.
No.
But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And Makwetu, you know, I was listening to you. Some of the things you were saying when you were taking me through your journey were new to me, you know, and anyone who knows me knows I'm an opera fanatic. And I wish one of these days somebody takes a book and records a lot of things that because I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, this woman, oh my God, you know,
Come on.
as you were going, you know, you said I did La Boheme before there was Cape Town Opera with Aviva Pelham, and you know, and I'm thinking to myself, Makwetu, you've made it. You've arrived.
Oh my goodness! Yay! Thank you, Marcy. You can write my memoirs one day.
Thank you, Makwetu, and thank you for being a mother. Thank you for being a mother, because I know for a fact, like people that you've directed, everyone calls you Mama Chris, because that's who you are. That's who you are. When you walk into.
That's such an honor for me if people call me Mama Chris. Thank you, Marcy. I really, you know, I love the way that they really respect and honor you in that way. And that's just a great, it's great joy to hear that.
And thank you for making it possible for us to do that. Before I let you go, and I let you go get your Saturday, you might want to go to Rondine and get ice cream.
I can watch the end of the rugby game.
I just want to find out, Makwetu, with your experiences, the journey you've walked in this industry, with everything that you've done everything. If you had to go back to the 5-year-old that watched Handel, the 5-year-old that watched Handel, what would you tell Christine in that auditorium? Something that you know now, and back then you would have never even guessed. What would you tell as words of wisdom?
I think it's, who said it? Paulina. But I think something which I struggle to this day is love yourself, be kind to yourself, and trust yourself. It's very hard sometimes for me to trust what I'm doing, and then I start doubting myself, and that is so destructive. So love yourself, be kind to yourself.
Tell me, Makwetu, am I allowed to give advice to you? Just what you
Yes.
say.
Of course you can.
When you start doubting, when you start not trusting yourself, just look at your track record.
I know, but I'm a bit of a perfectionist in a way, so it's often hard for me. But you're right. Thank you.
Just look back and go, hey, look at me. And the rest, Makwetu, is going to happen. Thank you very much, Makwetu. Thank you for coming through. We got comments where they said here on the chat that you're a force in the opera world, and they appreciate you. So thank you, Makwetu, very much, and we celebrate you.
Thank you. And I just also want to thank you for putting this all together. If I look at all the women, our paths have all crossed. And how grateful am I for that? It's wonderful. Thank you, Masi. I really appreciate your kind words.
Thank you, Makwetu. Have yourself a beautiful evening. Go and watch the rugby. And thanks to everyone who came through and watched tonight. Tomorrow, we have Aviva Pelham coming through to discuss her whole career with us and have a conversation about all her highlights and all her challenges. And Dian, thank you for taking time out of your busy Saturday and making sure that you came through. Have yourself a beautiful evening. And we're going to play out with Porgy and Bess clip from Makwetu. Thank you.
Thank you. The production of Porgy and Bess is actually a wonderful vehicle for our company because it deals with all sorts of issues that we have in South Africa at present and issues that we had in the apartheid years. There are a lot of people that are striving to make this into a wonderfully harmonious and thriving country as we are.
What a hardest believe of the Lord,
we have changed the setting from Porgy to set it in the townships, and I was and the designer, we were very inspired by photographs that were taken in Soweto in the 50s. Performing arts plays a huge part